I'd like to call to order the Board of Education meeting for Monday, April 28th, 2025. Kristen, would you do a roll call, please?
Bridget?
Here.
Tracy?
Here.
Eric?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Aaron?
Here.
Ann?
Here.
I verify that quorum is present. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mark, will you read the school board mission statement?
Yes, working together to ensure high levels of learning for all.
Thank you. Kristen, was public notice given?
Public notice was given to the requesting news media. The agenda was posted in school district buildings and on the district's website.
Thank you. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
There are no changes.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Ann, to approve the agenda as presented. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We have no requests for public input on tonight's published agenda, so we'll move on to our first item of recognition, which is donations.
And we have a number of donations to recognize tonight. $125 from an anonymous donor for district-wide needs, $125 from James Stull for Eagle Bluff Elementary, $115 from the Rotary Club of La Crosse for the On Ability Program, $1,000 from the Irving Perch PTO for yearbooks for students, $2,500 from Irving Perch PTO for student field trips, $1,000 from the Wisconsin Society of Science Teachers Milton Pella Grant for hydroponics at the high school, $1,250.55 from Kish and Sons for pizzas for the Onalaska Middle School students, and that is in relation to the gas line leak. And while Kish and Sons were very generous in donating this, they did not make a mistake. The line that was hit was not properly marked, and so when the permit was pulled from Excel, they thought they were clear, and obviously they weren't. But we really appreciate them stepping up and helping us out with that expenditure that we incurred.
Much appreciation to Kish and Sons as well as all of the other donators. It's always very interesting and remarkable to see the various ways in which our students are remembered and supported. Thank you for that, Janet. We'll move into student and administrator reports. Leah's not here, but Jared, start with the high school.
Leah's not able to be here this evening, but she will be here on Monday, May 12th for her final meeting before graduation. We're excited for Friday morning. For our professional development, we have our teaching staff divided into three different groups. One group's going to be going to the Western Apprenticeship Center, as well as the Western Integrated Technology Building. One group is going to be going to Inland Packaging and Chart, and then the third group is going to Fort McCoy, specifically for their medical training area. Our teachers are very well versed, generally speaking, in what the four-year pathway looks like for students after high school, but the more that they know about the other pathways that exist, flat out, the more impactful conversations they can have with kids. Staff are excited about these. They were able to choose their first choice, and all of our staff, except about 3 or 4, were able to get their first choice. We were limited on space, but we're excited about the educational experience this will be for staff, and flat out, all 3 places that we're going are also excited about having teachers come in the building also. It's a great partnership.
Middle school, Ben.
All right. So I don't know if you heard, but we had a little gas leak. So that was some excitement, but just to recap that, super impressed with all of our staff and students and how they handled everything in stride. And then as we had to, making decisions as information was coming in on the flow and trying to communicate with everybody did a great job going to where they were supposed to be going, doing what they were supposed to be doing, had 0 student discipline issues during the evacuation time. And so everything went as well as it could have. So I just want to shout out our staff and students for that. We, like all the other schools, got to host incoming Superintendent Barton last Friday, and he got to meet a lot of the staff, so that was some excitement. We continue to have a lot of home tennis, track, and softball competitions, as well as away, and those are going well. We have a spring play coming up next week, Thursday and Friday. Shrek Jr., the musical, I believe. We're also getting ready for next school year. Next Monday, we have a meeting with our incoming 6th grade parents. And then finally, bright spot, Kelly McMahon and Jana Yashinsky. Reese found out today the La Crosse County Library Board decided that they were the La Crosse County Library Educators of the Year for the work that they do for our district and for our students. And so congratulations to Kelly and Jana. Jana is our associate principal, and Kelly is our part-time associate principal, subbing here and there. So we appreciate all that they do.
Thanks, Ben. Then, Lish, I think you're taking the lead for.
I am, yeah, thank you. Well, kind of leading off what Ben said, we're having a lot of meetings between our OMS staff and our 5th grade staff doing the transition of 5th grade to 6th grade, getting ready for them to go up to middle school. So just combinations of all of our support staff getting together to make sure that everybody has the information they need to best support students as they move up to 6th grade. Our Staff Appreciation Week is coming up the week of May 5th, next week, so we're looking forward to celebrating all of our staff throughout the week. And we have our staff engaging in our 4th time meeting with Shannon Keebler for our math PD this Friday. So she has worked with us a lot this year and hopefully continuing into next year on best practices in math, and really excited about the stuff that we're seeing in classrooms with that. Northern Hills and Eagle Bluff attended their EBLC trips last week. We do not normally go at the same time with 2 buildings, but because of the PD day next week, Northern Hills had to switch with another school so that we could go. It just happened to be at the same time as Eagle Bluff. And then Irving Perch will go May 7th through the 9th. And each of our schools, we had a handful of students who went just for the day trip instead of the full 3-day trip. And let's see, then also yesterday, Sunday, I had the opportunity to attend the UW La Crosse School of Education Educator Award Ceremony. We have a couple of our staff members from Irving Perch that received awards. Taylor Krapp, a kindergarten teacher, received the Early Educator Excellence Award, and that is given to a teacher in their first 3 years of service. And then also Tyler Hamby, PE teacher at Irving Perch, received a mentorship award for hosting student teachers and PDS students. And I was asked to be the keynote speaker, so I provided some remarks for them about just the power of education and how that can change kids' lives and change families' lives. So it was a really, really honor to speak to all of the donors for scholarships and all of the young pre-service teachers heading out into their career. But really nice to see some of our staff get some awards as well. And then Abby had shared, since she's not able to be here, that their kindergarten has their informants they had it last week, excuse me. They got to show off everything they've learned about beats and movement and tunes and rhythm and voice and all of those things. Next week, we have our kindergarten informants at Northern Hills and our 5th grade showcase, and then Eagle Bluff has their 5th grade showcase next week as well. Lots going on here in the last month of school.
So I have a question on Eagle Bluff
Sure.
Learning Center. With 2 buildings going, was that a plus or a minus or the same? I mean, is it more chaotic? Was it synergies that helped? I mean,
It was probably all of those things, Brian.
okay. Perfect.
Well, and we had a little bit of a nice, Jana actually attended as a Eagle Bluff parent, but then was able to get to know all of the incoming 5th graders, or incoming 6th graders, excuse me, that were there from both of the schools. So I think that was a positive experience for her. We were able to, Todd and I were able to work together to share transportation and things like that to make sure that the day trip kids were able to get to and from, and just kind of shared some of the staffing of that. So there were some things that were definitely pluses, but it was definitely tight on room. So they did not have extra space at all for what we had there. So there's some pluses, some minuses to that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Liz, could you share your speech with us?
The whole thing?
If you could email it, sounds incredible.
Sure. It was 20 minutes, so I won't share it with you right now.
I read quickly.
But yeah, I can share it with you. Yeah.
Todd, anything to add? Thank you. All right. So we'll move into our next agenda item, which is the Student Technology Handbook. And, Janet,
I think we have the.
Number 11.
am I doing here? I keep better track. Building updates, we'll start with Jared.
Thank you. The big push has continued to be on the east wing, and so you're seeing pictures right now of the drywall being added in what's going to be the instrumental music area. This is a double room right now. There will be a wall that goes down the middle to separate it for the two different ensembles. We can keep moving. And again, more drywall going up into the specific rooms now in the renovated former receiving area. That will now be the music offices and the practice rooms. The dance studio is coming along very quickly. It's due to be done in July, but they've made great progress on it in the last week. They still have to put all the flooring in. They still have to put the acoustic panels in. It sounds like a concrete box right now if you're in there from an echo standpoint, but it'll change quickly with the acoustic tiles that'll be put in shortly. And then in the new receiving area, that area is getting very close to being finished. And then they only have a couple pictures, I think, from the new shop area, but the welding booths going in. New brick going on the outside of the east addition. And then you'll notice that picture on the right, the Fayette hallway has been completely tore up this week for the plumbing going into where the locker rooms will be renovated. So that was a major project to have happen and be ready with. And then prepping for new walls within the locker rooms.
This is on the outside of the band room. They are finishing up the masonry work and on the walls on the outside there. This is radiant heat spray. The overhang, I think that's part of the new section, part of the, like that not vestibule, but the breezeway, the walkway underneath, because the 8th grade wing comes out further than the allied pod, the 8th grade pod, and so there'll be a little walkway underneath. So that, I believe, is the ceiling for that walkway there. This is continuing to work on that new addition there. You can scroll down. That's a different angle there. And that's the entrance coming in there. So we are just a couple of weeks away from this being all done and turned over to us. Sometime in mid-May is the current projection. So it's been a long wait, and our 8th graders and teachers, I'm not sure who's more anxious to get into the new classrooms between students and staff. What else do we have?
Ben, are they going to be moving over, like, during this school year yet then?
Yeah, that's something we've talked about a lot. And at the end of the day, every week we delay is another week they have to go into next school year. And
Right.
so, even though it seems, why bother with only, a month or so left, that's another month that they can get working on demoing and redoing those spaces. So another month.
I'm sure the
sooner.
kids are excited to get in the new part,
They,
though.
they are too. They are too. Yeah. We've talked about it a lot. There's a lot of pros and cons of, do we just keep them where they're at? But at the end of the day, the biggest thing is it just delays the rest of the project that much further. So, yeah. So this is, yeah, it's a very good question. It's one that has come up a number of times from a number of people. So you're not alone. This is one of our new 8th grade science rooms. Same layout as the 6th and 7th grade. Just more of the lockers in the new wing there. Bathrooms. This is our resource offices. And putting some flooring down. Painting in progress as they continue to work on renovating the old gymnasium for primarily for Boys and Girls Club use. So I think, is that the end of the pictures? Okay. The biggest thing, again, is the new 8th grade and allied pods being a couple weeks away and just trying to make preparations for that. Because when those are ready, then everybody, all of our staff and students will be out of old sections of the building. Not everybody will be in their final destination yet, but everybody will be into new spaces. So that'll be a huge milestone for us coming up in a couple weeks.
Amazing. Thank you. Now, we can go to Janet for our first reading and discussion around the student technology handbook.
I am not going to go through this book, this handbook that it is attached. It's attached for everyone to read. I just want to talk really more about process. So this is a brand-new handbook. We did not have a student technology handbook before. And our LMC directors at the middle school and the high school, so Nicole and Heather and Kelly, did the heavy lifting on this, and they should have, because they are the ones that live this and breathe this day in and day out. So what they did is looked at samples from 2 other school districts, Holman and West Salem, took their documents and basically looked at them and tried to make them ours and make them match to what our practices were. So then they did that work, then we came together as a team to review the information and then brought it together as an admin team and reviewed it there. When we started out, we were making this a 612 handbook, and then when we reviewed it with the entire administrative team, they suggested that we make it a K-12. So what we did is we just changed the sections for those parts that were applicable only to 6 through 12. We made that, and then the rest that is applicable to all. So as a handbook, this is requires 2 readings, and then we will put a link to this in our student handbooks that will be coming forward later, but because this is a new handbook, we just wanted to bring it separately for you to have the opportunity to look at it.
Janet, I just had a question on the sections that are 6 through 12 only. Is that just because those Chromebooks tend to go back and forth with the student?
Correct. Yep, so they go home in the evening, so then there's discussion in there about charging and making sure that they're brought. In the other grades, there are, in some cases, 1-to-1, but they stay in the classroom and they're used that way. And then at the very lower grades, there's Chromebooks that are basically on a cart that are not 1-to-1. They serve, I don't know, like maybe 1-to-15 or something like that. But those are discussions that we're having more and more as everything becomes more and more technology-based. How soon will we be 1-to-1, even at those lower grades, even though those machines are not going home in the evening?
It was a great idea to put this together. I'm envisioning some input from our technology people, too.
Yes, yes. So actually, the whole thing started out through the Chromebook insurance. We were talking about that and then realized, like, well, we don't really have a policy that kind of helps us with that whole insurance. So it was the technology team, the finance team, our LMC directors, and our administrators that all came together to bring this forward.
And I see there is some flexibility as far as that insurance goes for some families. Great.
Yep, it's optional.
Does anyone have any questions for Janet? Okay, thank you. And we'll stick with you for quarterly financials.
Right. So for the financials, as you know, this is a quarterly report. Every month you get in your board documents, and you approve it through the consent agenda, the financials, but we don't go over them on a month-by-month basis. We do this quarterly, and it's for the operating funds. And the reason for the operating funds these are the funds that all districts have, regardless of if they've got debt or if they have capital projects or different things like a Fund 50. Some school districts don't have a Fund 50. We've got Fund 80 now, our Community Service Fund, and we've got a co-op fund. So these are just the operating funds that we're going to be targeting tonight. Then looking at this, one of the things that is always something to watch is what's happening with our cash flow. And what you should be looking at as board members is how is this changing from over time, and with those changes, can we explain why they're changing? And you'll see the lighter lines are last year's data, and then the darker lines are this year's. And you can see the most variance there is on on the expenditure side, and that's because of payroll. So last year, we had our three payments or payrolls in September. This year it was in August, so you can see that difference there. And then this year, we also had 3 payrolls in January, so you can see that spike in January. And then last year, it was in March, so you can see the lines close again. So they will be off a little bit, but that's just whenever the 3, because we pay every other week. So those change year to year. Then looking at our revenue, this is to look at where does our revenue come from? 86% of our budget is state and local, so basically that revenue limit formula that we talk about. And then the next biggest chunk is Wisconsin Intermediate. That's mostly our open enrollment in. And interfund transfers are eliminated in this chart. So then looking at Funds 10 and 27, looking at our revenue, seeing how these variances, and again, what you want to be looking for here as a board is where are we in comparison to last year? Because what happens is we're not incremental throughout the year, but we're pretty similar year over year. So you want to be looking at how are our year over year numbers comparing? And then with those variances, what are they and how can we explain those? So you can see that in the local revenue, we are receiving a little bit more this year, and that's mostly interest that we have seen. And then every year the tax cycle changes from the amount of money that we have. We're relying more on taxes, so we're seeing more of that money coming in. We've now, the January, so people that pay their taxes in December, we get that settlement in January. For people that pay in January, we get that settlement in February. But you can see that higher number, meaning we're relying more on local taxes. Why are we relying more on local taxes? Because as our revenue or as our enrollment declines, it looks like we're richer than we really are because there's more property value behind each student. And so then the state thinks we're wealthier, and so we get less state aid, and unfortunately then we have to rely more on taxes because that's an inverse relationship between local taxes and state aid. You can see in here that our open enrollment we don't receive, there's no money that has come in from that, and we don't receive that money until June after we have educated the students for the whole year. Again, another reason why we need fund balance available for us. And you can see we are receiving more money in state revenue. Our equalized aid and computer aid did go up, but not at the same level that local taxes did. So we did get a bump, but not as much over year. Then you can also see in the federal revenue, you see that big drop there, the ESSER funding ran out. So last year we had ESSER funding, this year we do not. And then on the other, the more money there last year was because of E-rate from some networking projects that we had done and that we got E-rate funding through that. Another thing to notice is that we are 75% through the year, and we've got about 55% of our revenue. So that's just the way schools are funded. We are funded late on that. But when you look at each of these lines, the overall variance is not that much different, line by line a little bit different. Then looking at how those revenues compare when we look at what we've received from fiscal year to date compared to budget, you can see that gray line, there's nothing there. That's that open enrollment revenue that I talked about that we'll be receiving in June. But other than that, it's looking it somewhat mirrors one another. Then looking at our operating expenses by object, you can see that 74% of our budget is salary and benefits. And then the next big chunk in that pie is our purchase services and our educational payments. So those would be things for all of our off-site students that are placed at on other facilities, as well as our 4K partners. Those students that are in neighborhood partner sites are paid through that area, as well as our voucher payments to private schools, all show up in that big chunk there. Then when we look at our expenses, remember, we look at these two ways. One way is the what, and then the other way is the what for. And you can see that from a dollar amount, when you're looking at percent of the budget expenditure, we're a little bit ahead of last year, but you would expect that because our budget was a little bit more. We added a bunch of positions this past year. So we would expect it to be up both in dollar amount and percent. And then there has been this past year some changes. We abide by something that's called WOOFR. And what it stands for is Wisconsin Uniform Financial Accounting Reporting, maybe? I can't remember. But basically what it is, it's how we code our expenditures and revenues to make sure that there's comparability from district to district, so that we could look at another school districts and compare them to us and us to them. And there were some changes in coding this year, and that's the reason why that capital project looks like it's way down. It's really not way down. A lot of those we're now to be classifying, so this change was made for everybody, from being in capital objects, and now they're in purchase services and educational payments. So you can see that number's up a little bit, but the capital projects is down, and it's not a complete offset because last year we had the tail end of that Eagle Bluff chiller going in there, so that's in our last year's financials, and that's why that's showing a little bit more. But then our other expenditures that are up, you can see our supplies are up. We've been doing a lot of things with pilot materials for our ELA adoption. Library, we've done a number of tech equipment things. And one more thing on the capital objects, we bought a new van last year. So then looking at our operating expenses, you can see these ones do look pretty much mirroring one another on proportion to budget. Then looking at our operating expenses by function, and again, this is the what for, just another way of taking that data, and so we're kind of doing like a two-way slice on it to try to figure out and try to understand it better. 67% of our budget is direct student information, or direct student services with instruction, co-curriculars, and student services. So that would be like our counselors, our nursing, all of those people that are serving the students directly. When we look at the expenditures by function, you can see that the co-curricular looks like it's a little off. And the reason for that is last year, the ESSER grant for the Boys and Girls Club at the middle school needed to be in the budget for 23-24. So you can see there was $250,000. That's why that was up higher then. And then this year, the reason that the expenditures are even up more, there's a lot of that money actually got spent this year, even though the budget was in last year. And then if you remember, we approved a pole vault pit replacement, and then we did the Verkada door entry systems at the elementary. That didn't go through the referendum because that was out of Fund 10. So that's the reason for those increases there. Then looking at our operating expenses by function, again, nothing here that looks out of the ordinary, those, except for that top line. And again, that's because of those payments to vouchers. We pay them, so the voucher schools get their payments right away, but we get that money subtracted from our state aid at the very end of the year, so it doesn't hit our books right away, even though, but they're not withheld on their money. They get their money up front. So our next monitoring, you will be getting, like you do each month, the financial statements that go through this information. looking at it the same way, but just looking at it fund by fund. And then for the fourth quarter on June 23rd, we'll do our final budget amendment for the year.
Very good. Anybody have any questions for Janet?
Excuse me.
Okay.
Then what I will do is go into, well, should I just jump into the next
Yeah,
item?
we're gonna move to action items, budget amendment, right?
So what we're going to be approving, or what we're going to ask the board to approve, is this document, which is the budget amendment. But I think to help you with taking action on that budget amendment, this document that was in your materials that show the budget changes is a little more helpful. And we're always going to see changes month to month as we look at this. Like, that's to be expected as we go through the time. What I wanted to draw your attention to was in Fund 39, you can see some bigger amounts there. So what is going on in this case is, remember, we issued debt. We issued the last amount of our bonds, the 25 million in bonds. And with that, we had a bond premium. So that's in the 900 source, the 1.8 million dollars. That's what that is the bond premium. Then the 25,000 is just additional interest that we're budgeting for. And then in the expenditure, the 223,120 is all of our bond issuance costs. So that's what's showing up in Fund 39. Then you'll see a larger change in Fund 49, that's the Capital Projects Fund. The $875,000 was a payment from the Boys and Girls Club on the part of the donation that they are doing for the middle school for the partnership of using that facilities. And then the 25 million, it was the bonds that we issued. And then the 1 million reclassification, we pretty much put like the money in the 2,500, and then as we have different expenditures going in for like furniture and different things like that, we'll move it from line to line. But other than that, the rest of the changes are relatively minor, but I can answer any questions that you might have. Those were the big ones. So our ask would be that you take action on this budget amendment as of the end of March 2025.
I had two questions, Janet. On the federal sources, the 5784 change, was that ESSER funds, or what was?
Yeah, that was title funds.
Title funds, okay.
Yep, and we have that quite often too, that our title amount, as time goes on, and these ones were actually from the private schools. Because those title funds are not only for our school district, but we must serve the private schools as well, and then they make changes with the money that they're allocated.
Okay. The other question I had was the business administration services, the $50,000 change.
That was let me go back here, that was our support for technology. You can see that we have more money coming, so it's a reallocation line by line, so more money needed in technology support.
Okay.
And then where we were able to reduce a line item so that we didn't affect the bottom line overall was in the business administration area.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Janet? This does require approval.
I would move for approval of the budget amendment of the 2024-25 budget outlined in enclosure 14 amendment.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Brian, to approve the amendment of the 2024-25 budget as detailed in enclosure 14 and presented by Janet. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Wait,
I'm sorry,
hold.
roll call, please.
Yeah.
Brian wants to do a roll call.
Tracy?
Yes?
Ann?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And Aaron?
Yes. Thank you. Next item, we'll move to Sonia.
Yeah, so I've been in contact with our Alaska Education Association to start negotiations on base wages. So we are asking the board to open the negotiations with them, starting after tonight.
I will make a motion to open base wage negotiations with the Onalaska Education Association for the 2025-26 school year.
Motion by Bridget, seconded by Ann, to open base wage negotiations with the Onalaska Education Association for the 2025-26 school year. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Sonia, we'll stay with you for the employee handbook.
And there are no additional revisions to this second reading.
Any
I
other
would move
questions?
for approval of the employee handbook that we have in enclosure 16.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Tracy, to approve the 2025-26 employee handbook as detailed in enclosure 16. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And are there any requests to remove items from the personnel report for separate consideration?
Thank you, Aaron. We have one teacher resignation, Soleil Barbo. She is moving out of the area, so we wish her well. We are bringing a new teacher on board, Abby Hilby, for the board to approve as our special education teacher at Irving Perch. Abby is from this area, so she's actually moving back home. And then Brian Booker is a custodian that started here at the middle school this last week. And then we have a number of resignation notifications. Just to point out that this is a time of year where paraprofessionals kind of look where their life is heading, and some of these are moving out of the area, some are starting school. But the one that is moving away from school obviously is not going to return, but the other 3 are going to stay on as subs. So it's not that they're leaving on bad terms at all.
I move that we approve the personnel report as outlined by Janet and in enclosure 17, or outlined by Sonia and outlined in
second.
enclosure 17.
I'll second that.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Tracy, to approve the personnel report as presented by Sonia and detailed in enclosure 17. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Are there any items in the consent agenda that are requested for separate consideration?
Seeing none, I would move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Brian, to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The Board of Education will now entertain a motion to convene in closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, parens 1C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, for the purposes of considering the resignation request of a district teacher and the circumstances leading to the request for resignation. The board may take action required. In closed session, the board will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting at the conclusion of the closed session.
Second.
Motion by Ann, seconded by Mark, to motion to convene in closed session as pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, parents 1 and C, and read by myself. Are there any questions? All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, roll call, please.
Brian?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
And Aaron?
Yes. We'll convene in closed session in this room in